Hey guys, what up? Let's see how the newest creation of an idea is working. Usually I've been experimenting a whole lot with any kind of teams before making like videos and content and so on. This time I want to have you be part of the process. So what is my idea? What am I doing here today? Well, essentially, because of the whole like air, water, enchanter meta right now that we're facing, that makes big chunky healing and just high health targets due to, well, high health is countering pure damage from enchanters a lot better. So a bunch of things to be tested out with Colossus, Verden, toxic openings, right? And one of the basic ideas going into that is, well, just playing basic synergies. Because you're investing your bonding onto Cardulox. We've seen the same thing be done with rogues. Now we will see if, yeah, we can essentially just make the same thing work with fighters and rogues on the basic idea. Invest the bonding onto Cardulox, Toxic Colossus, super tanky, super strong early game, especially because it's very difficult to take down the Cardulox and the Ranger, so most of your team will survive, you will deal a lot of damage to your opponent, and you can probably finish a lot of teams off around turn 4. And yeah, if we can't finish them off turn 4, then we eventually put in some more Colossus units than just the Cardulox, and eventually put in a Rampire, and we can probably steal around late game from our opponents. Because, well, Rampire is really good at just having a good angle and killing an entire team late game if you have enough turns to try with it. I guess there's a fair chance that I could go for fire and I could get hyper here, but Earth Doka, usually the strongest one just on pure stats that you can go for in the first round. And Cardulox being a nature dominant, it's not like the Earth is gonna give my opponent a lot of hyper, I believe. Alright, interesting that my opponent is playing for this opening at all. Probably not gonna kill a unit, maybe can kill the Doka here. We'll see about that. Doka not getting focused anymore, and the Colossus guys and Toxic are taking down everything. You can see Doka is not doing that much damage, but Doka's ability on the Earth Doka, after it casts the, I don't know, Fist Slam, whatever it is called thing, the next 3 attacks cause the target to be disarmed. Disarmed means they cannot attack, they cannot gain energy, and nothing. So incredibly powerful, especially early on, because that means all Doka hits you, you can't do anything, hits you, you can't do anything, hits you, you can't do anything. Super, super strong there. Now on turn 2, playing against a water team, so I likely want to put in my air guys. Go for 3 air, 2 rogue, and the 3rd fighter here. Question is a bit, how do we position this? Well, Ranger was on this side. Can just go like, yeah, maybe Ranger's gonna be on the same side again. If not, it is fine, I guess. And I'm gonna split my Dokas. Fire Doka being the highest damage dealing Doka, so it's gonna be in between everything else, more or less the safest spot. Ah, opponent switched. It's like, it's just a 50-50. It's like, my opponent is good enough at the game that it's like, ah, maybe I switch Ranger, maybe not. My opponent knows it, and so on and so on. So yeah, we'll just see how this one can go. Now, double Enchanter cast, very strong, but they did not finish off my team. I could kill most of the enemy team in time. And we will certainly win. The question is, with how many units will we win? Not with as many as I would have hoped for. Pretty much just, yeah, if rogues would have been on the correct side, would have been a lot better. Could have dealt more damage to our opponent here. The main part about the rogues being on the front line is that they just took more damage from the Enchanter procs than they otherwise would have, I believe. Now here you can consider to go for Ripteros and a 20 cost Photon Ripper Augment, but because we're playing with the Enchanter team, we are going for the fire route here, and we're gonna go for Ramphy and the Volante, trying to take down this Ranger. I can probably use Ramphy for debuff because I have this inhibition field. Otherwise I would consider just putting damage augments, but inhibition field to debuff the enemy Ranger seems incredibly strong here. And I think we just give our team a little bit more energy, because I think I will eventually have to transition to a Rampire here, so this Augment will just always be good. And when we go for Rampire, we keep the 3 air Illuviums, and we're gonna sell the other ones. So yeah. Now my opponent did not play around any rogues coming to this side, so the 1 Volante there is enough to take down the enemy ranger. Volante having a fire buff, having a 4 rogue and 3 fighter buff, incredible damage output, and inhibition field on Rampire, doing lots of work here. Now, Quantum Reclamation on Rampire can be very terrifyingly strong, and also the other things do nothing, so we go for the Quantum Reclamation. Nature Affinity Chip is interesting. Certainly could be interesting, but I believe we just take the Restoration Suppressor. Yeah, Quantum Reclamation also not only for Rampire, but I do have a Rampire in my team, so if I could get this Augment would be great, but I think the other Augments are too low quality, so my opponent will probably... Oh. Yeah, I won't get it. Now I'm very certain my opponent will play around rogues on the ranger now, or maybe put the ranger here in the middle or something like that. So this turn we can consider... Yeah, we can consider replacing some things and playing bigger guys, or we can just consider playing Augments. We can also consider repositioning. I think I am setting up for the switch to Rampire this turn, next round. Usually you would put defensive Augments on Cardulogs, but I don't think that's very good in this matchup. Yeah, I think we are just setting up for... We are just setting up for next turn and eventually swapping to Rampire. Because I do not know if I can finish off my opponent. If my opponent would be at around 200 health, I would certainly try to finish them off here. This way I still have a strong turn. Still have the Rampire, still have all the rogues, still have the Toxic Colossus and everything. But we are just gonna have a very impactful Rampire next turn. It looks like I closely lose. Maybe we could have finished off if I would have played for power on this turn. So I can drop out of these 3. And that's like a lot I have to drop out of. Yeah, this is sometimes things happens when you build new teams and it's like, wait, what am I actually doing this turn? I mean, I certainly have to bring in the Rampire this turn. Could just play no defensive Augments at all. Could go for no defensive Augments at all. Let's just see how it goes. I'm gonna have a really big Rampire ult here anytime soon. And it looks like just playing for full damage was it. Yeah. Okay, but this is kind of how it goes. I try some new things, and oftentimes throughout the game I'm a bit lost in what I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, I guess that's the fun of the game. I feel like I find new teams every single day. Now let's check out the team overall. Let's just talk a little bit about the team and the ideas behind it, because you seemingly I won against 1900 opponent. That's like top 50, top 25 on more or less one of my first games ever with the team. Seems really good. It seems like you can certainly get enchanters, you can get them off guard. They don't really know what to do, they don't really know what to expect. So let's jump into looking at the team overall and let me explain a bit more. Now, you have essentially one turn one option, which is, well, you go for the shield and you go for Cardulox and you make this immortal god king of early game, which is Toxic Colossus. Let me make my face a bit bigger as well. Nice, you guys can see me. Yeah, you make the super tanky early game guy, and the toxic synergy is a tremendous amount of damage, and everybody gathering around your toxic Cardulox in the earlier stages, not being many ranged enemy Illuvials and such. Toxic will just kill off the entire enemy team, and these small little healing amounts make sure that your Cardulox survives, ensuring that your opponent also takes a tremendous amount of damage. Compared to if you would just play a bunch of fighters or a bunch of rogues, your opponent would usually be able to kill a couple of them and avoid taking a lot of damage, and then they can make it to the later stages of the game. Now, we don't want that. It's the same idea with the Flish, right? You have a Toxic Colossus bonding, incredibly strong. The big downside is you cannot use your Ranger for composite bondings on other things. We take that downside away by just playing primaries, by playing Fighter and by playing Rogue. Now, on turn 2, you have multiple options, but realistically speaking, you will probably just go for Triple Fighter, Rota Volante, because turn 1, you can decide if you want to play a Doka, if you want to play a Rota, or if you want to play a Volante. But by turn 2, just depending on what your opponent runs, like against a water team, you can go for lesser air Doka, right? It's going to get hyper, great. Against a nature team, fire Doka, great. Against a fire team, earth Doka, great, right? Basically like that. So you can decide based on what your opponent is running turn 1, which Doka you want to play, or maybe a Rogue. And on turn 2, you put in 3 air. You put in 3 air, you put in 3 fighter and 2 rogue, Rota, triple Doka, and the air Volante. And then on turn 3, this is where you get options. If your opponent is playing a team that is Enchanter or Psion-ish, then playing in more fighters is not very good. They're just gonna die to the Enchanter procs or the Flish beams and so on. So that's what I did last game. I would put in Rampire and the lesser Volante, and then you're left with 50 points. Now, those 50 points, the strongest thing you can do at that point, because you're solo frontlining Cardulox, is to give Cardulox, for example, a 40 Thorns Augment. The entire enemy team is going to be attacking Cardulox. They're going to take a tremendous amount of pure damage from this. Let's just assume entire enemy team, does like 10 attacks, 5 Illuvials? That's 50 attacks, that's 2000 damage on this 140 cost Augment. That's crazy. That is very much a super high tempo, super strong play on that turn 3. Or you can also just choose the invulnerable option, and your Cardulox is going to hold up the front line a lot longer, which is really good if your opponent plays a very single target oriented team and they have to kill the Cardulox first before they can get any of your rest, before you can get to any of the other Illuvials that you run. Most teams do have a lot of AoE options, so your best bet is to kill them before they can kill you though. That's hence the Thorns option very good on that turn 4. Now, if you go for the 5 fighter option, you're adding another Toxic Fighter, Riptorus, and you're adding Foe, which leaves you with 20 points left, which leaves you with putting a lesser Photon Ripper on Foe. Now, why is this so strong? It is so strong because Foe has the highest base attack speed of all units in the game. It's at 120, and if you add 40% attack speed on top of that, it is just gonna go crazy, insane attack speed, and insane attack speed works incredibly well with pure attack damage on hit, because, well, the attacking quicker means more attacks, means more on hit pure attack damage procs, right? That is very powerful, and especially in combination because you have some rogues and this pure damage can also crit. So the 2 rogue synergy giving the rest of your team, you can check that out here, giving the rest of your team a little bit of crit chance, a little bit of crit amp extra. It doesn't look like a lot, but it basically means instead of critting 1 and 4, you crit 1 and 3 attacks. So it's just all these nice small synergies coming together that give you a tremendous amount of damage. And then on turn 4, you would just be adding the Indomitable Augment on your Cardulox because it's still your single solo frontline guy and you have filled out the rest of your team with damage dealers, and you would be adding more pure damage augments to Foe and to other fighters like Riptorus, for example. The main hope and goal is to just win the game on turn 4. I think the game I just played, I was very insecure if I could manage to finish off my opponent on turn 4, so I was just trying to set up for a better transition to Rampire and for a very devastating Rampire turn by setting up the energy team-wide gain augments already. which are not bad. I mean, your Dokas have very powerful abilities. Kadulok's taunt is incredibly strong, so it is by no means bad to just go for this if you feel insecure about being able to just immediately win. But putting your opponent on super low health totals, which this team should surely do most of the times, means that Rampire is a so much more devastating unit for them in the later stages. Because if Rampire is just on the correct side of your opponent, it will always kill half of the board for sure. And if my opponent places their relevant units on that half of the board, then they are just dead, right? We easily win. On the same note, a Fire Gauntlet Ranger with Phantom, super insane late game because it does insane amounts of damage. Also very difficult to kill that Ranger, as with Phantom it becomes a rogue, so you can freely reposition it to the other end of the field. Very hard to target with all these like furthest target abilities that people are playing at the moment. Now, the ways to go to the Rampire, which is like your turn 5-6 idea, is, I think there are two ways. One way, like I just did, you just sell the Cardulox, you put in the Rampire, and you're like, okay, Rampire is gonna kill your team before you kill me. I don't have tanks anymore, but I have infinite amount of damage, which is very good versus teams that also don't have crazy high amounts of damage. Like the Enchanter team, for example, lives on shielding and scaling throughout the fight with Augments, with Gauntlet, and so on. They didn't have the damage to just kill all my small units like insane quickly, right? And at the same time, I also have 3 air on my team, so their first abilities take longer and such. So against a team like that, not much upfront damage, very much built around defense and tankiness, you can just go for the Rampire immediately, and you can probably just blow up the entire team. Against teams that do have more DPS, like Berserker-oriented teams, Fighter-oriented teams, Arcanet-oriented teams, I'd probably, on turn 5, I'd probably not go for this fast Rampire transition with putting these preemptive augments and such. I'd essentially just go ahead and be like, okay, which is easier if you are on the 5 fighter. On the 5 fighter, you can just sell lesser Earth Doka and lesser Fire Doka. You maintain the 3 air and 3 fighter, and you put in a Nala Carrion. You just have a tremendously stronger frontline. You keep the toxic bonding for longer. Very, very good. And if you are on the 2 rogues, well, you're probably going to be dropping Ramfi and Lesser Volante 1 turn after putting them, or 2 turns after putting them in, would be turn 5, you put them in on turn 3. And yeah, you would be dropping Ramfi and Volante, which feels bad because Fire feels like such a good trade. So depending on the matchup, you can drop Air as well. You drop a Rota and Volante, or you drop a Ramfi and Volante for these 2 tanks. And then you probably go for the Rampire the turn after, and if the game goes super, super late, you would be swapping in out the Dokas for the Riptorus and Foe, and you can go for the Foe pure damage combo as well later on. Different options for Rampire Augments if you want to get a super, super quick cast. Very good versus non-air based teams, because then your Rampire is just gonna jump, go to the sky, Inferno is active, everything goes boom, crazy. Yeah, just upfront energy is very good. If they play air-based teams, usually Vitality Veil is very good. And you can, I don't particularly like this, but if you can try around with this. You can even put a Photon Ripper for crit chance on Rampire, because Phantom, whenever Rampire auto-attacks and crits, gives you a little bit more mega power. And well, Phantom also means your mega can now crit. You don't have 100% crit chance. You pretty much get almost 100% if you put more crit chance on this. So the initial ability of Rampire, way more devastating. Meaning, if you're fighting against teams that clump in a corner, the Rampire ult oftentimes just goes down, they all drop to 10%, 20% HP, and then they just survive, they heal back up. If high crit chance, your Rampire ult is gonna be later, and your Rampire is gonna have less like survivability and defensive stats and whatnot, but you just deal so much more damage. And if you can protect your Rampire, if it can get the ability off, if it can get the Omega off, it's probably gonna wipe that entire team that is clumped in a corner, because it's gonna have slightly more Omega power and it's just gonna crit on everything. Let me know if you enjoyed a video like this, where I haven't tested this a whole lot. I just played just played a cool game versus a super high ranked opponent. I thought might as well share it afterwards and just see how it goes. I think this team has a lot of potential. You can certainly consider, if you're facing a bunch of these air water heavy teams, you can consider to go for nature instead of the Rota Volante. You can drop like lesser Volante and lesser air and lesser air Volante and lesser air Doka for nature Dokas, nature Doka, nature Volante, together with your foe that is gonna make free nature. could be really good. I personally don't want to double down on it. I will eventually try it, but I feel like I already have so much nature with Cadulox, Foe, Ripterus, Arcalion, with all of this, that maybe it would be too much. I like the air idea, but let me know. Did you guys try it out? Do you guys want to try it out? Do you have any other ideas for the team? Appreciate all the comments. Like, subscribe, all the YouTube algorithm stuff. I think I'm never saying that I'm a bad YouTuber. Appreciate everybody watching if you made it to the end, and see you guys in the next one.